The topic I chose to do was ASL in the high school. All high schools should offer ASL as a second language because it could be more beneficial. Wouldn't it be more beneficial for students to learn a language that they will actually use versus, say, French? ASL is uncommon, but if you put it in schools and offer it as a second language, we could educate the world in a language that not many people know of, but a lot of people that need it are using it. I've been fascinated by sign language from a very young age. I've always wanted to learn it. I've seen lots of TV shows about it, like Switched at Birth. I've read books about it. I've tried to teach myself it. I've just been fascinated by it. ASL means American Sign Language, and that's when people talk with their hands to get their point across, not like what I'm doing now. It's more of like to say like words and say letters. With signing, the brain processes information through the eyes, where shape and placement and movement all play a big part in sign language. Why might people talk with their hands? People who are hard at hearing or deaf can't hear you, but they can see what you're saying because the brain will process information through what they can see. Some people who are born deaf never learn to talk because they can't hear themselves say anything, and they can't hear their parents try to say mama. They can't hear it and understand it. So they use signing so they can talk with their hands or their voice. Not only people who are hard at hearing or deaf use sign language. Kids with autism use ASL because they struggle with communication, and it's easier to get their voice heard if they can just do it with sign language. Also, people who have cerebral palsy use it because they can't move their jaw and their head as well as everybody else can. And so that makes talking and eating so much harder than it is for someone who doesn't have it. Also, kids with Down syndrome use ASL because a lot of times they're delayed in development and they have learning disabilities. ASL can improve communication skills with, say, their teachers or their parents or their friends. Research shows that ASL may help with speech development, social interactions, and learning new words. It's important that we can all learn ASL so we can communicate with others who have disabilities. ASL should be taught in all high schools, and courses could help communicate with others who can't understand us and can't hear us. When I was in high school, German and Spanish were offered as second languages. I took German. I really enjoyed the class. But, second language is really good. It looks good on college applications, job applications, pretty much anything. But you don't ever use German. The only time I personally would probably use German is if I went to Germany, like on our class trip, or I went later with friends. But when you go to Germany, they all speak English anyway, so it's really kind of pointless. Most countries across the world are learning English in like first grade and so on and so forth. So you barely will use German. If you learn ASL, it's more beneficial for jobs. Say you're going to be a nurse. Like I'm planning on being a nurse when I'm done with college. But if somebody comes in as deaf and like they're trying to explain to you what's wrong with them and they can't get their point across because you don't understand what they're saying because they're talking with their hands, it could be very beneficial for somebody to learn that so you could help them easier and quicker. ASL would count as a second language for high school credit, so it would count, you get the same credits as say you took German or Spanish. And it would make people who rely on ASL get their message across so much easier so they don't have to feel so misunderstood all the time. In conclusion, I've just discussed what ASL is, American Sign Language, why people use it, because they can't hear, they can't understand what you're saying, you don't understand what they're saying, and why it should be taught in high schools. It should be taught in high schools because we can educate the world on a new language, and that's always fun. ASL is uncommon, and putting it in schools, just high schools or elementary schools even, will help educate the world, and we can change that uncommon. Teaching ASL in high schools would be beneficial once students enter the workforce. Be more beneficial because, like the example I used for a nurse, or say you're a cop and you have to put handcuffs on somebody and you're trying to ask them questions and they can't talk because their hands are behind their back. It's just really hard. ASL is a second language and should be taught in schools so people with disabilities and hearing disabilities can understand you and feel more understood. The sources I used for this presentation was nidc.gov, duolingo.com, babiesinsignlanguage.com, and academic.oup.com.